Hi everybody, I'm going to do my best to capture on video the making of one of our family's 3D masks. I've never done anything like this before, so bear with me. All of the information that I hope to share here can also be found in a post on my Facebook page. There it is, pictures with instructions in the caption of each photo. You're going to start with 2 rectangular pieces of fabric. This is the outer fabric for this mask. This is the liner. We will end up with a casing for a removable nose piece, and we will end up with a filter pocket. I am a fan of a removable nose piece for a few reasons. One, you can take it out and give it a good scrub in a way that you can't if it's in there. I also like it to be optional. So if a nurse wanted to use it, or a doctor, as an N95 cover, they probably wouldn't need the nose piece to be in there. Or if a parent would prefer not to have it in there for their small child, it's optional. And then the third reason I like to have it removable is because if for any reason the nose piece should wear out, it's very easily replaced without the whole mask being compromised. The first thing you're going to do is finish the outer edges of the outer fabric and one of the short edges of the liner fabric. I have already done that with my serger. If you're not using a serger, you don't have a problem. I just want you to add an extra 1/2 inch to the width of each piece of fabric and an extra 1/4 inch to the height of the liner so that you can allow for a traditional hem. So in this case, with these 3 edges I just spoke about finishing first and foremost, it's the first thing you're going to do. Here's my outer fabric. I would turn it in a 1/4 inch if I were using a regular machine, and I would turn it in another 1/4 inch, and then I would stitch. And then you would have a traditional hem. So you would do that to both short sides of the outer piece, and you would do it to a short side of the liner, those 3 edges. Then what I want you to do to the liner, right side to right side, you're going to turn it down 1 inch. Again, this is going to be right side to right side. Turn it down 1 inch. Now you're ready to finish the long sides of your liner fabric. I'll pause the video long enough to go serge these for myself. If you're not using a serger, you would take wrong side to wrong side 1/4 inch and another 1/4 inch on both sides to give you a nice finished hem. Okay, I have just finished the side edges to my liner fabric with the serger. The next thing I'll do is go to my regular machine, and I'm going to sew a seam that will allow for the casing for my nose piece. And I like to, I eyeball it normally, but I'm going to do this for the sake of clarity. So I come in at the regular machine 1 inch over from one side. Doesn't really matter, I'm left-handed, so I start over here, and then I'll end up about 1 inch from the other side. But this seam is going to look like this. So you're going to start at the top, stitch down and over. And I can tell you that I typically stitch about 3/4 of an inch down. So 1 inch over, stitch down 3/4 of an inch, come all the way across here, stopping about 1 inch from this side, but stop right there. Do not go back up, because you want to be able to remove this nose piece if you're like me. Seam that I just described to you, it's kind of hard to see on this white fabric, and I apologize for that. This was the next request that came in, which is how I landed on these fabrics for this video. But you can see from this side, I start at the top, came down, came over, and stopped. So this is the right side of my fabric. This is the wrong side by the time the mask is complete. Now what I want you to do, and this cutting board grid is perfect for this mask because I can put my edges on the bold lines, and there's the center of my fabric, easily recognizable. I'm going to take my liner fabric, fold it in half, wrong side to wrong side, So I have folded my liner fabric wrong side to wrong side, which means the right side is out at the moment. And now I'm taking my liner right side to right side and I'm centering it against the outer fabric. So I'm going to go ahead and put a couple clips there to hold that in place. Flip it around, again using the grid on my cutting board. This fabric is shorter than the outer fabric by design. I have found over time that that works best. It allows for the liner to tuck itself in nicely and give all the more breathing room when the mask is being worn. So if you can see what I've done right there, I have now centered the bottom edge against the outer fabric. So your liner is now centered against the outer fabric, right side to right side. And now I'm going to go to the serger. If you're using a regular machine, you're going to do the same thing. And I want you to stitch 1/4 inch from edge to edge, top and bottom. Okay, I have stitched 1/4 inch seam, side to side top, side to side bottom. Now this is one of the beauties in my mind of this particular pattern, just 2 pieces of rectangles, because the turning of this is so easy. You just flip it. And there's no corners to have to deal with. And the top stitching is a whole lot easier as well. So now I'm going to top stitch top and bottom. And I'll just go to my machine, my regular machine, and start side to side, side to side, and top stitch at the take a very narrow seam. Okay, I have top stitched top and bottom. I'll try to get this up so you can see what a narrow hem I took there. Top stitch side to side, top and bottom. The next thing I'm going to do, and I've just cut this out of cardboard. This happens to be 5 inches tall, 2 inches wide, but you can see most importantly I have a 2-inch diagonal cut out of this, which makes the turning of my corners by 2 inches extremely easy. Again, this is another reason I'm a fan of folding corners rather than cutting them, because it's so much quicker for me. And I keep a level edge here, keep a level edge here, put my point there, and I'm going to do this to all 4 corners. The other thing I found in folding rather than cutting, I have more flexibility, so I can, when creating the origami, correct for any mistakes more readily than if I had cut these corners off. So again, I'm just lining up, making sure that's level, and the tip of this cardboard is right here at the edge of my fabric. So now I have turned down my corners 2 inches for this adult mask. The children's mask you'll turn down less. That information is at my website. The next step is when I also appreciate having this cutting board grid. So I'm going to fold right here at the edge of my folded corners, and I'll show you what I've just done in a second. So I've got this lower edge folded up. I like to keep it level against one of these lines so that when I get ready to fold the top, I make sure I've got parallel top and bottom pretty readily, just by making sure that the top is nicely lined up against one of the grids and the bottom. This helps to create a very uniform and symmetrical origami fold. So the next thing I'm going to do is pause the video and go to the ironing board, and I'm going to press. Okay, I have pressed both sides of this so that I've got a nice crease where I want them to be. Some people prefer to top stitch these seams. I personally don't, primarily because the first time I made this back in early April, I found right away that it stitched my filter pocket down. which didn't leave me much room to put a filter in. By not top stitching those folds, I have plenty of room to put my filters in. So that's personally why I don't take the time to do it. Just to finish up what we were talking about, top stitching those horizontal folds is definitely a matter of personal preference. And if you like the look of it, you can definitely make it work with this pattern. The next thing we're going to do is make the casing for our either ties or adjustable over the ear option. For this particular mask, I will be doing the over the ear adjustable option. If I were going to do ties, I would just take a 36-inch strip. I use twill tape for both, 3/8-inch twill tape. This is pre-shrunk. And if this were tie, it would be 36 inches for each side. And I fold it in half and nestle it in against the fold of my casing. For both options, I make a 5/8-inch wide casing, and I would nestle it in there again just to make sure I don't catch it when I'm sewing my seam. I would take this to the machine and I would sew a seam about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch in. In this case though, I want the adjustable over the ear option. So I'm going to open my mask up to make sure I know which is the top, which is the bottom. This is the bottom. I'll take a segment of the 15-inch twill tape, just under 2 inches, tuck it in there, bring it up and around like this. Again, I'm going to fold it in half on itself to tuck it in and nestle it in against my casing fold. Fold in 1/2 inch. I do measure this just to make sure it's what I want it to be. That's 5 inches. I'm going to clip it. I don't normally do this because I'm at my machine at this point and I can just slip it over there, but for the purpose of this video, I want you to see what I've done. So I've clipped it. I've got a 5/8-inch casing. I've got my twill tape tucked in, the raw edge against the bottom fold of the mask, curled it up and down, and now I'm ready to stitch. The seam I actually took was a 1/2 inch seam from this outer edge of the mask. And as you can see, I've done that on both sides now. I've tied a knot in the dangling end of the twill tape, so I'll do the same thing on this side. And I always instruct my mask recipients, I leave these extra long. They can always trim them if they need to, but by the time they get it on and off, sometimes they need that extra length. So that is what we've done to create the casings. The next thing we're going to do is make the folds. This is where our approach lends a more boxy effect, and we like it. Other approaches I've seen just basically take this flap and fold it edge to fold horizontal seam. That will give you a more elongated look. So again, this is a matter of preference. But to get the boxy effect that we have with our mask, I'm going to take somewhere between the edge of my liner and the corner of the fold is a good ballpark. And I take it up to about where I just made that 1/2 inch seam. I'm going to pin this. Again, I don't normally, but I want you to see what I've done. So I'm going to do this to one side first, and then I'll do it to the other side. But as you can see, it's a little bit deeper of a fold than what just taking this edge to the top or bottom would be. So I have that. I'm going to go back to the machine and basically sew very close to or on top of the casing seam that I just made, so about another 1/2 inch seam. So I have just stitched those second seams on either side to catch my folds in place. And to finish it off, I usually just pull that for packaging purposes. You can see that the liner tucks in nice. I use 16 gauge jewelry flat wire. I'm gonna fill my casing. I usually back it out just a little bit. I never measure this, I just fill the casing and back it out a little bit, and it works out really well. So now I've got my nose wire in there, and our mask is complete. There you have the Cone by Design 3D mask, otherwise known as Dr. Cone the original and Dr. Cone 2.0.